Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're finishing up 1 Peter chapter 4 today. We're studying the life and letters of the Apostle Peter, and in my quest to not hold you much more than 5 or 7 or 8 minutes, we've shortened the passages that we're dealing with. We're going to be looking at the end of chapter 4, verses 12 through 19. Chapter 4 really is a summary chapter for the things that he said before. He really had two main topics. One is the way we're supposed to act in this time of crisis, and the other is don't forget that when you suffer, you are fellowshipping with Jesus, and you're joining the ranks of the saints of old. The very thing that Jesus said at the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount, when you are persecuted, when you're falsely accused, rejoice and be exceedingly glad because they treated the prophets that way before you. And the saints that are living with you now are suffering this, and you're going to have a home in heaven. So it connects past, present, and future, which he does as well. Verse 12, chapter 4, and I'm going to read through the end of the chapter. Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal among you, which comes upon you for your testing, as though some strange thing were happening to you. But to the degree that you share the sufferings of Christ, keep on rejoicing, so that at the revelation of his glory you may rejoice with exultation. If you are reviled for the name of Christ, you are blessed, because the Spirit of glory and of God rests upon you. By no means let any of you suffer as a murderer, or thief, or evildoer, or troublesome meddler. But if anyone suffers as a Christian, let him not feel ashamed, but in that name let him glorify God. For it is time for judgment to begin with the household of God. And if it begins with us first, what will be the outcome for those who do not obey the gospel of God? And if it is with difficulty that the righteous man is saved, what will be the outcome for the sinner? Which seems to be a quote or a reference to Proverbs chapter 11. Therefore let those who also suffer according to the will of God entrust their souls to a faithful Creator in doing what is right. It really is emphasizing our communion through suffering with those who have gone before and with Jesus himself. But that in itself reinforces this message of good behavior, Christian behavior, that has been the thread that unites everything throughout. Don't be surprised. Jesus said the same thing to them in John 15 on the night he was betrayed. Listen, this is how it's going to be. They hate me, they're going to hate you. A servant isn't greater than his Lord. Jesus said it in the Sermon on the Mount. This is the way it's always been, and this is the way it's going to be. Paul said this to Timothy in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 12. Everyone who seeks to live a godly life will be persecuted. This is the way it's going to be. When he says fiery ordeal, that's not a metaphor for anything that was happening to them. Tacitus in his annals reports that in Nero's persecution, Christians were covered in pitch and burned alive. This is literally happening to them. He says this is the way it's going to be. But Jesus is going to come soon. And this is going to be glorious on the day when he comes again. And then he says, don't let any of you suffer for your bad behavior. And this is going to be important to Christians for a long time. In fact, it's going to produce Hadrian's Rescript, which Hadrian the emperor issues in AD 149, and that lasts for over 100 years, in which officials throughout the empire were not allowed to arrest Christians for just being Christians. They were only allowed to arrest Christians if they had broken any other laws. And Christian apologists and defenders would say for another 150 years, 200 years, listen, we're law-abiding citizens. We pay our taxes. We do what we're supposed to do as citizens, except this is our religion and we're not going to violate it. So why not leave us alone? Why not legalize our religion? Why not take a look at our religion and see if it's not true? That's what's at stake here. And then there's the notion that judgment, this is a time of testing, of judgment. This is going to really separate those who have truly been converted and those for whom this has been something social or something academic. Some people come to the truth because it's the truth. and they know it in their heads, not both in their heads and their hearts. It's an academic exercise. Someone's won the argument. Okay, you're right. I give. I'll do what you say. And for some people, they fall in love with the brotherhood of it and the closeness of it and just the way Christians are supposed to treat each other when they see that actually happening. But they haven't really assented to the truth of the doctrine that's taught. It has to be both, or we're not going to survive. And it has to be head and heart both, or we're not going to survive. And Peter is saying this is going to show us who has really been converted and who hasn't been converted. And if it's a time of trial and testing for the church, what's it going to mean for those who don't even belong to God? Well, important words for us to listen to even today. And we should not forget, as he ends today in verse 19, that we have entrusted our souls to a faithful Creator, and so we need to do what's right. When we're together next time, we'll pick up with chapter 5. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.